mostly about claims here, and this is just as an illustration because most of what I will say is also valid for underwriting, those people working on premium prediction or risk management. You can make the parallel. The use cases, though, are on claims. So the first point is AI. What is AI changing? There is a lot of skepticism about AI. And what I'm trying to convince you is that we are now beyond the proof of concept. It's past the time where people are just trying. They are now really deploying full speed AI. It's only a small portion of the insurance industry. We are not a particularly, I would say, we are more conservative industry, as we all know. But for those people who are past the proof of concept, they have already used that on multiple use cases. I will take a couple of examples from general liability, from professional liability. We mentioned medical malpractice, and also commercial auto. And there are already some quantifiable results. So let's start with what are the pain points and what AI can help into those pain points. Essentially, whatever the workflow is, but here is illustrated on claims, we are trying to manage time and information. And what AI can do on time is automating some of the tasks that are really manual, not really adding much time. So if you are those managing claims adjusters, you know that up to 60% of their time is, summarizing documents, structuring data, maybe sending emails and generating reports, not the actual resolution of the claim. So one of the first value of AI, which we call workflow assistance or workflow automation, is automating those manual tasks to save the time of the claim adjusters and be focused on the high value added task, which is the negotiation, the resolution of the claim. On the other side, we'll have other example of use cases which are more decision support. So now the objective is not simply reducing cycle time, it's also providing the most accurate information as early as possible. So again, if you take the example of claims, you all know that if a claim lasts, it goes and escalates and it becomes really much more severe. Just by the fact of time, because of the litigation process, because also of the angriness or maybe the retaliation on the plaintiff side. Now on the predictive analytics, which is really the decision support, the objective is to have timely decision and also consistent decision. AI maybe not better than the best claim adjuster at their best, but it's much better on average on a consistent basis. So essentially you can consider that both values, saving time and providing the most accurate information in a timely and consistent manner, can be a replacement for a new hire. Certainly not replacing your existing expertise, but codifying your expertise and avoiding that it disappears when those people go and retire, and having a virtual assistant. So let's take some examples. Again, those examples are on claim, but you can consider other workflow. The first example is the early triage, right? The first notice of loss, claim is open. This portion can be highly automated. And what we tend to do with our clients is identifying key risk markers instantly to protect captive. So, for instance, we know that some jurisdictions, I mentioned the case, are more dangerous than others. Those are highlighted. Some injury that may be isolated by themselves, not so serious, combined with the association of such lawyer, trigger our attention. And when you combine the different variables, then you can identify the high risk level. With very, very basic information, the old models can include up to 60 to 80 variables, but with a handful of variables at early stage, first notice of loss, you can have a one-letter grade from A to F where A and B would be, the random claim, you don't need to spend too much time. D or F, you will focus immediately your time here in order to avoid the escalation. One of our clients, we identified that after 9 months, there was this tipping point. If you can solve the claim after 9 months, or even before the 9 months, you avoid the escalation. When it goes after 9 to 12 months, then it becomes more serious and you lose some of the action on the claim. So this tool is Agatha from Optimalex. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Minority Report, an old movie. You remember that Agatha was the system they used to predict where the crime will happen. This is a very similar situation. Another example is benchmarking, right? This is having access not only to your own personal claim, even if you are the best claim adjuster ever. You don't necessarily have access to your colleagues' claims, or even better, to your market claims. So the power of AI is, while anonymizing all the data, giving you access to a federated knowledge, where each claim, of course, is different, but there are some portion of the claim which looks like a bucket that is already identified by the AI. And then you have access to hundreds, possibly thousands of similar claims, and here you can compare how many of those claims did end up paying, how many did end up with no liability. That's interesting. What was the range of the pay? Here there is a high range up to 30 million. It's not always the case, fortunately. What portion of the claim was involving legal representation, no legal representation? So again, this will be very much easier with simulation on AI. Are some of you involved into reserving? Who are involved into reserving?
No, but you run a captive and you don't reserve? Come on, everybody had that.
Right. Maybe some others are lawyers or involved with lawyers who bring estimates to the outcome with their experts, right? So this is the next use case. Using AI, and again, access to thousands of data points to benchmark with the reserving. And here, I mean, without going into the detail, here we are comparing the estimate of the outcome by the AI, the estimate of the outcome by your lawyer or any other reserving system. And you have three types of situation. AI can provide information, at least rough ballpark value, very early stage, because having access to thousands of data points, you have a better understanding earlier on. That's the first example. The second example is when the lawyer is providing a value and AI is providing a very similar value. I mean, the lawyer can be also an expert. Then you are just comforted into the decision, and you can go full speed, ask maybe for settlement authority to your chief claim officer, to your chair of the board. And the third situation is when AI gives a different prediction from your expert or your internal system. Well, this is a second chance for you to challenge the internal estimate. Doesn't mean that one or the other is wrong or right, but at least take a second thought which variable we're triggering this AI prediction.
Have you run into any difficulties with the audit process when you get these more and more complicated models that include AI or decision trees, machine learning, things like that?
Audit from whom?
Audit from auditors that are auditing like a captive or...
So, for instance, we had an audit with a reinsurance company. So the reinsurance audit is an excellent example, actually, which is here. When you audit, for instance, claims, reinsurance hates surprise. So if you can prove that you have made the reserve on a consistent basis, maybe you are under reserving 20%, which is very popular to under reserve because of good reasons, it's fine, provided you can explain why it is 20% and provided it is consistently 20% below. Not sometimes minus 40%, minus 20, and sometimes about more 20%. So this is a good example where the audit is comforted with the use of AI and how consistency can be highly appreciated. The other example I was going to give here is data structuring. So this is like the most boring job sometimes claim adjusters have to do. They have hundreds of medical records, maybe dozens of their lawyers' evaluation report, and name it, the expert reports, etc. Of course, they can read everything, and they should read it at once, but they need also to summarize. They need to structure the data. What is from this data really predictive or causal value, not just a random data. And AI can help that. So we have the example where the data processing through AI have improved the accuracy of the prediction up to 6 times. So that is really, really very powerful. And of course, you keep the summary, you can check it and you can correct it, but you don't have necessarily to write it all from the start. The last example I want to give is the result, the return on investment. I think, Alex, you mentioned the return on investment on your first slide. We are past the proof of concept. Now the return on investment can be quantified after a couple of years, 3 years. Our program are in general 3 years, but you can quantify some early results after 6 months or 1 year. So up to 33% time saved in the manual task. Some of the example I mentioned in data structuring and summary of long text documents. 10% on reduced legal spend. Why? Because you are reducing the cycle time. You are reducing the cycle time. You focus the lawyer investment where they are more adding more value, and overall you save the time of the lawyer. 5% reduced indemnity. Of course, you have to be very careful about reduced indemnity. The human decision is always the most important. But again, consistent assessment of claims brings savings just naturally. In some cases, it can go up to 14%, but the return on investment is clearly above 10x the initial investment in the system. I want to end into some keys to the successful implementation. In the strategy, I started by saying there is skepticism. So one good way to overcome skepticism is really to start with the priorities and the quick wins. Always the low-hanging fruits first, because then you build the buy-in naturally from your team. You need a leader, of course, to start the process, but you cannot expect everyone to be completely enthusiastic. So you have to build the buy-in. And in terms of the outcome, let's bear in mind, technology is an enabler. We said saving time in workflow automation, we said decision support in the predictive analytics. It will never replace the leadership, it will never replace the human decision. And we encourage always our clients to keep human experts or human claim adjusters, if it is the case of the claims, as the final decision makers. The technology will help them, but never replace them fully. So that would be the end. Start with the business decision. What is the business priority you want to have? Is it just to avoid recruiting someone, so saving time? Then workflow automation will be more important to you. Is it to provide a better consistency in your decision for reinsurance or for other external party? Then probably predictive analytics and decision support. And why not a mix of both? The same system can be featured to work on both use cases. If you have more questions, I guess we can stay at the end and we'll be happy to answer.
Sure. A question that's come through a couple times in the on the app is around nuclear verdicts. I think you mentioned that. How do you get AI to pick up on things that may be less representative in the data?
That's of course a question we get a lot from our clients. So first, statistically, nuclear verdicts are not a trend, even though there are many on the highlight of the media. You get that on 0.1% statistically of the case. So you cannot build a trend out of that. However, we know from experience that some lawyers, some judges, some counties in general, some courts, and the combination of the above with certain situations, certain allegations, certain injuries, trigger more often than others the so-called nuclear verdict. And by the way, the definition of nuclear verdict can vary, but let's say extreme outcome. Some people, a lawyer called John Hall in Atlanta, call that aberrant verdict. That means they're not rationally explained. They certainly don't compensate an injury. They are more into the social inflation. You got a case in New Mexico in November 2024, 400 million for erectile dysfunction. I don't want to make you laugh, but you will think about that. So the answer is, it is a combination by exception, but you don't predict statistically.
There's a question about what programs we're using for doing this predictive modeling. Frank, do you have any favorites? I could say mine, but go ahead.
Right, well, we use Agatha, so it's a combination. At Optimalex, we make a combination of different technologies, from natural language processing, which is much before the recent wave of AI, machine learning, and of course, generative AI, and we stack different models. The most important point is not really the technicality, it's really the user interface. You want to have something which is very intuitive, which avoids double documentation, of course, and which is secure.